being Liberty DeVitto and being able to play the drums the way I play the drums, ex-wives can take the money. The government can come after you if you didn't pay a tax or something like that. They could take it away, but they can't take away that thing of playing the drums. They they can't do that. Nobody can take that away, unless of course the mafia breaks your arm or something like that. But
Yeah.
that ain't gonna happen,
Then
because I don't deal with them.
Liberty, welcome to the podcast. This is so great to meet you and have you on the show.
Well, this is great too. Yeah, I see your Van Halen flag in the background there.
You can see the Van Halen flag in the background, and I'm certainly a fan of your work with Billy. So we're going to get into all of that, and a lot of this really just is coming from your book, the 2020 book.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What led you to writing this book?
Well, it actually started out as a family history for my kids. That's what I wanted to do. I have 4 daughters, and I wanted them to know where my grandparents came from, how we came from Italy, and like what my father and his brothers did, the life that my mother had, which was not very nice, but it's very important to know where you come from, because that's how you find out who you really are. You know where you come from. So I started the book with that. I was lucky enough to have my dad till he was 91 and my mom till she was 89. So I was able to interview them, tape the voice, and they would tell stories. My Aunt Millie, she was alive out of all the brothers and sisters of my father. And when I would ask her, I would say, Aunt Millie, what was my dad really like? And she would say, oh, he was bad, Lib. He was so bad, So I got to really to talk to them and feel like I was there with them at the time, because they describe things like to a T. It was great.
Yeah, I tell you, man, not with elderly, you want to talk to them, get those stories before it's too late. And I did that. My mom had an aunt and uncle who her uncle was in the Air Force, and he was in the war, and he was telling me all these stories, like, oh yeah, I was in the plane, I saw the bullets coming at me and all that stuff, and sure enough, a year or two later he was gone. You think if you don't talk to him, don't ask them those questions now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, they have so much history, especially around the time that they were in World War II and all that kind of stuff, and Korea and Vietnam. Now the Vietnam guys are dying off, and it's crazy if people don't talk. And it's really weird to me when I ask somebody, what's your nationality, and they just go American. I'm not. No, I mean, like, before you were American.
Right.
And they say, oh, I don't really know. What do you mean you don't really know?
Yeah, especially now you can do ancestry.com. You could really go back. Yeah, talk about your early days in New York City. Your dad was a police officer, right, in the city?
Yes, he was. He was actually a police officer in the neighborhood that I live in now. And, he didn't want us to grow up in Brooklyn, because that's where he grew up. And my dad was a toughie when he was a kid, like teenager and stuff like that. He used to run with a real dangerous crowd, my mom actually made him take the police test to become a policeman. So he moved us out of New York City because he didn't want us to be in the same environment that he grew up in. And the funny thing is when I moved back here, I would say, Dad, I'm back in New York City. I'm back in Brooklyn. And he would say, where are you? And I would name the streets that I live on. And he would say, oh, you got to get out of there. It's bad. It's terrible. It's really bad. Well, I said, no, it's changed. It's so different now.
You did say that you had to be tough in your neighborhoods growing up. Is that the case?
Oh, yeah. Out on Long Island, when we were growing up, you had to be tough because, there was we didn't grow up in an Italian neighborhood. We grew up, let's see, the block, one house was Irish. The next house, there was 2 Italians in a row. Then there was a German. Then there was another Irish. Then there was Jewish. And then there was, so it was all different. And back then, there was, now they considered nasty things to call people, but you used to call them, and you would start fights and but you're always friends after the fight, but you learned how to do that. My mom once watched this bigger kid have a fight with me out in front of our house. And she said, I I was fighting back so hard, but I was getting beat. But she said, because she grew up in East New York, which is the worst part of Brooklyn right now, and she said, I just had to watch you because you had to learn how to defend yourself and not give up no matter what.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is interesting because I was going to ask you about some of the difficult times you went through in recent years and how you got through it. And I think that answers the question. Is that your mom, your dad too, I'm sure, just said, "Hey, he's got to go out there. He's got to fight for himself. He's got to learn how to do it.
Yeah,
Can't
and
ask for help."
my dad was such a tough guy. He used to tell me like I had to cut my nails. He used to look at my fingernails, and goes, "Your nails are too long. How are you going to make a fist if your nails are that long?" It's like, Dad, I don't want to make a fist.
Now, did you have that? Like, did you grow your hair long? And he was like, "What the hell are you doing?" That
Well, I
like
grew my
cut your hair.
in the '60s. I grew my hair long, and he hated it because I looked like the people he was arresting.
Yeah.
And he couldn't stand that.
Well, and like so many musicians from that classic rock era that you're from, it was the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in February of '64. Yeah, that lit your fire. You never took lessons, which is amazing. You learned by just listening to records.
Yeah. I joined the sixth grade school band when I was in elementary school, and they put me on the snare drum, and I couldn't do the buzz roll in the Star Spangled Banner. The one that goes all the way through. And the drummer, I mean, the teacher said, "Put the sticks down, DeVitto. You'll never do anything with the drums." And he put me on the bass drum, and it was like, that's boring, you know. So I left that, and I didn't know, I didn't do anything. I'm not into sports. I never was into sports. I don't like male on male contact. I don't like that kind of stuff. So I didn't know what to do when I was in high school now, junior high school now, and the girls were walking in the hall. They liked the guys that played sports. But it wasn't until the Ed Sullivan Show, when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, it was like, okay, all these girls are screaming for these guys. I can do this. I don't want to
Yeah.
do the buzz roll. I want to do what that guy's doing on the drums there.
Now,
You
but
know.
when do you realize you have a sense of rhythm? Like, when do you know you could keep time? Because that's not
Oh,
something everybody can do.
no, I knew I could. My mother was a great dancer. She used to cut school to go see Frank Sinatra. She loved music. And she used to dance. Her and her sister won a dance contest. They danced to "In the Mood." The Glenn Miller's "In the Mood,"
Yeah, I love
and,
Glenn
and,
Miller.
and they won the dance contest to that. And so I think I got my rhythm from her. She used to say my dad was a square, all the time. But she loved music. She played music all the time in the house.
Yeah, I had the little drum pad. That was my thing. You have to do that drum pad all the time. And I just lived in a house where I don't think if I got a drum set, man, it'd be so damn loud. That's the thing with drums. You got to
Right.
find somewhere to practice that's not going to drive your parents nuts.
Right. Well, it's funny because my mom really encouraged me. I mean, my dad, in his way, encouraged me because every time he heard me playing the drums when he came home, he would leave and go to the movies or something like that. And so it would allow me to practice. But I would be downstairs, and I would want to learn this new thing that I heard on a Vanilla Fudge record or something like that, where the bass drum would go boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, and I couldn't go boom, boom, boom. And I would come upstairs and I'd go to my mom. I can't do that. I can't do it. She'd grab me by the shoulders and turn me around and tell me to go downstairs. And she'd say, start slow, do it slow, and then start getting faster. A lot of these kids today, they try to learn the drums and they watch these videos of these guys on internet, and they try to do what they're doing. And it's like, you're never going to do it like at their
Right.
speed right away. You have to do things slow.
Yeah. And then your first band is the Rogues. That's while you're in high
Drugs.
school, and then
Yeah.
Crystal Circus. And then in 1967, you join a band called the New Rock Workshop, which is when you
Yes.
first meet Billy Joel. And then
Yeah.
6, 7 years later, you're in his band. How did that all come together? How did you end up in Billy's band?
It's funny because back then he was called Billy Joe. He wasn't even called
Yeah.
Billy Joel. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even though that's his last name, Joel. But yeah, he was in the Hassles and I was in the New Rock Workshop. It was an underage club where they just served soda and stuff like that. And we were the two house bands. And sometimes we would play together. And I would just see him passing in the dark of the club, and just say hi. Wasn't until I was in this to this band called Traffic, which Steve Winwood was in.
Oh yeah.
And I love the song Colored Rain. And one night I was watching the Hassles and Billy sang Colored Rain. And I thought, okay, this guy's good. You know, he's doing the material that I really like, you know. And the funny thing is that later on in our careers, when we got together, we were able to relate to songs like that because we both grew up listening to the same music. You know, the difference is what made the band great was that he went that music and then classical. I went that music and kind of oldies and R&B. So joined together, and it became what the sound that you hear on the records.
That always seems to be so important. In fact, some of the greatest songwriting teams, you find out that a lot of times they have drastically different interests, and then but somehow it just you meld it together and it becomes its own sound. Which
yeah,
is
well, like I said in the book, you know, somebody asked me, so you guys were kind of like Lennon and McCartney, and I said, no, we're like Laurel and Hardy. That's the way we were.
Yeah, Billy's got a good sense of humor, huh?
Yeah, we had some great fun.
Yeah, I mean, New York humor is a lot of ball busting kind of humor. I mean, what's
Well, that was the thing. You know, it's like I grew up in Seaford, Long Island, and then he grew up in Hicksville, and in between Seaford and Hicksville was this one town called North Massapequa. So we were so close to each other. We were both like considered South Shore people with Jones Beach and the ocean and all that kind of stuff like that. And we kind of hung out at the same kind of places, you know, the burger stands that they had at the time, and so we could relate to everything. Anything I said, he could relate to. Anything he said, I could relate to. You know, that was a great bond.
You could finish each other's thoughts. Yeah.
Right. Right. And that's what we did with the songs. We
yeah,
finished each other,
right.
you know, he would say
Right.
something and I would go, hey, why don't you do it? You know.
So you're not on the first 2 albums or 3 albums?
Well, if you count Cold Spring Harbor,
yeah, 3. So when did you started touring with him prior to recording with him on Turnstiles, correct?
No. First thing was Turnstiles.
Turnstile. Okay. So how
recorded
does
Turnstiles first?
Gotcha. And then from there you became the steady touring band from that point on. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Well, when he was in LA, Doug Stegmeyer was the one that got the gig to tour the Street Life Serenade tour, that album. On that tour, Billy said, I want to move back to New York because he was living in LA at the time, using studio musicians in the studio and a different band to play with him live. So he said, I want to move back to New York. I want the same band to record with me and then go on the road with me. And I want a New York style drummer. And Doug just looked at him and said, well, you know the guy already, you know.
Yeah.
And we had the band Topper, myself, Doug Stegmeyer, Russell Javers, and a fellow named Howard Emerson, who played guitar. And Howie's on that Turnstiles album too. And he went on the first couple of tours with us too.
Say Goodbye to Hollywood.
Topper became Billy's band.
That's it. Yeah. Topper was basically it's kind of similar to like Linda Ronstadt's touring band was the Eagles.
Right. Or Toto. They were, you know, Boss Skaggs and everybody else.
Yeah.
And so with the inclusion of Richie Cannata on the saxophone, who me and Doug Stegmeyer went to see play in a club, and said to Billy, okay, let's get this guy, you know.
Yeah.
And that became the Billy Joel band. We like to think that Topper got a singer that wrote songs and played piano.
Right. Exactly. Topper featuring Billy Joel. Right. Say Goodbye to Hollywood, I believe, is the first single release while you're in the band. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the inspiration behind that song? Because you write in the book about something Billy says while the song is fading out too. That's the other funny.
Well, the inspiration behind the song, why he wrote it, was because he was leaving Hollywood. Johnny was a gentleman, I can't remember his last name right now, but he was his manager at the time, you know, and he was like protecting him and watching over him and stuff. But it was time to say goodbye, you know, and he knew he was going to lose friends because he's moving on to something else. You know, so he's in New York, and we recorded the album, and he's doing overdubs, doing vocal overdubs, and at the end, I'm watching him, and I'm in the control room. He's sitting behind the piano, and he's singing, think about Hollywood, think about my baby. And then at the fade out, I get up, and I'm going to go to the bathroom, and he goes, "Hey, DeVitto, where you going?" And he thought, "Oh, that's so New York. I'm leaving it in."
I love it, man. Those are the things. I don't know. I don't know if you hear those things anymore in modern day. It's so different now, the way everything's recorded. Back in those days, it's all is recorded on tape, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
oh yeah,
no.
everything was on tape. There's a thing that I thought they would take out in the song called Zanzibar that's on the 52nd Street
Oh yeah,
album.
yep.
And right before it goes into the jazz part, and I play brushes, the whole song I'm playing sticks, right? And then it goes, and I'm playing on the cymbal. And then when it goes, you can hear me put the sticks down and pick up the brushes. You hear a little rumbling on the floor tom where I hit the
Yeah,
sticks.
that's
And
awesome.
they left it in. I thought, oh, that's so jazz.
It is, yeah. And Zeppelin, a lot of that too. You can hear the squeaking of John Bonham's.
His hi-hat when he's going,
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And what was the one of the songs where Robert Plant? You even hear him. There's an airplane going overhead, and he's like, "No, leave it in." I
yeah.
can't remember which song it is, but another Billy classic from Turnstile's New York State of Mind. And you say in the book that it's the only song Billy ever wrote the words and music for at the same time.
Yes. He was
Inspi-
living up in Highland Falls, which the song Summer Highland Falls comes from. And he sat down to write this great song and wrote the words and the key and the piece. Probably took him like 10 minutes to write it.
Wow. Man, Angry Young Man is another favorite of mine. But my personal pick from this album, Miami 2017. And for the longest time, I wondered what the story was behind that title. What is it about? And do you have any memories you can share about recording that song?
Oh yeah, we it was about when at one time Ford, New York City was broke, and the mayor asked the government, the who's the president of Ford, President Ford, for a bailout to help, and Ford said to tell New York to drop dead. They're on their own, and the song is all about like somebody in the future, in 2017, which has already passed. It's really funny.
Scary.
Uh, yeah, really. Uh, Looking back and telling his children and grandchildren, this is what it was like. They burned the churches up in Harlem. They did this. They sunk they picked the Yankees up for free. They sunk the carrier out, and all that stuff happened, and they destroyed New York. It's kind of a downer song, but you know, so the cool part about that was me and Doug and Billy just recorded it because it was just the three of us going in and doing the basic track. That's the one when Billy said, I think I need guitars on this. And that's when we got Russell and Howard to come in. We said, we're going to have guitar players. Why don't we get these two guys?
Wow. And Turnstiles reached number 122 on Billboard, sells 50,000 copies in the US, 36,000 in Australia, enough to give Billy a shot at another album. And that would be 77's The Stranger, the first of 5 albums produced by Phil Ramone.
Yep.
Six weeks at number 2, 4 singles, all top 40. Just the Way You Are, Moving Out Anthony's song, Only the Good Die Young, and She's Always a Woman. And it wins a Grammy for Record of the Year. Just the Way You Are wins for Song of the Year. Moving Out Anthony's song. There's a great story you tell in the book. Can you talk about how this song came about? And
Yeah.
it turns out you're driving the Corvette we hear in the end.
Yeah. Well, Doug is actually driving the Corvette at the end. I
Okay.
had a little Panasonic cassette recorder, and they had a microphone with a wire on it, and I taped the wire and the microphone to the fender of the Corvette. And we drove all around Northwood, skidding and going crazy and all that kind of stuff like that. But the song was written because on the Turnstiles tour, we used to like stay at Holiday Inns, in those hotels where you drive up to where the room is. You don't go in the front desk and you don't walk down a hallway to get to your room. You drive up to it. And we would, after we drove like 500 miles to get wherever we were, we would stay at this hotel, and we'd all meet by the pool or something like that. And me and Richie Canada would be talking to Billy, and we'd make believe that we were at Billy's house and we're standing by Billy's pool, and we can't believe what he's done, what he's been able to accomplish. And we say, "This is lovely. This is so beautiful, man. It's amazing. The property you have here, all the stuff you've got here. Your house is beautiful." And we'd say, "This pool is unbelievable." And Richie would tuck this tissue in his sweater, and he'd take it out and he'd be putting it on his face like, oh, it's so nice out here. It's so nice. And Billy would say, like, "Where did I take you inside? You see the basement. It's nice and finished. I have a bar down there," and stuff like that. So and then he would say, like, "You got to get out of the city, man. You got to come out, move out of the city. You're breaking your backs in the city." And then it became that song, "Moving Out."
Oh man, that's so cool, man. Songs come from everywhere. I mean, they can just come at any time. Uh, do you ever have those moments where you got to write something down before you forget it, or record a beat?
Oh yeah, I got a band out of Slim Kings. We always do that. It's like try to come up with ideas for songs. And it's like somebody will get one that's that you're driving in the car. It's like, "Oh my God, I gotta," at least your phone now has a recorder on it.
Yes.
Record something.
Yeah. Just the Way You Are. Phil Ramone knew it was a hit, but it had to get away from the groove that it was in. This is where you come in. What is it that you did to change things up for Just the Way You Are?
Well, we were playing it on the Turnstiles tour, and we were playing that. I think we were playing the Brenda and Eddie part of Scenes from the Time Restaurant, and we Just the Way You Are was more like a Stevie Wonder song, like "You Are the Sunshine of My Life." It was that kind of thing. Don't go changing, try and please me, And then I got in there, and Phil was like, "No, it's not going to happen. Not going to fly." So I started to fool around with the thing that I did on James on the Turnstiles album, which is just the 16s on the snare drum and the bass drum and the snare coming down at the same time, like. So it started to set up this thing like, "Don't go changing," and I could see Phil through the glass, in the control room, doing that thing, doing this thing, like with his arms, like going like that, and that was the boom, boom, boom. So we built that into what you hear on the record now. The brush came out because the guitars, they're acoustic guitars, and the brush blends so well with the acoustic guitars, So that's how I got in the song, was with the brush.
Yeah. No, the groove change is on Only the Good Die Young.
That's a big one.
Yeah, Billy first wrote it with a reggae feel.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Was it?
Terrible. I remember we were in Knoxville, Tennessee, and the circus was in town, and they were playing at the place where we were going to play. We were off for like 2 days or something like that. And me and Brian Ruggles, the sound engineer, ran off to the circus. And we stayed with them. We were on the train and hanging out with them, the little people and the people that swing on the trapeze and all that kind of stuff. It was nuts. It was nuts. We come back, and I'm walking down the hall outside, of course. Again, we're at one of these hotels. And Richie comes running up to me, and it was like, "You got to hear the song that Billy wrote. You got to hear the song." So Billy brings an acoustic guitar into the room I'm in, right? And he starts playing, "Come on, Virginia, go, let me wait." So it's like, I was the first thing that got me is because I was raised Catholic. It was like the lyric was like, I don't know, Billy, the Catholic thing, the Catholics are going to get really mad at you. And this Jewish kid is talking about Catholics, they do everything wrong and everything like that. So anyway, it goes into the studio, and we're playing it reggae. There's a version somewhere of it.
I was going to ask you if it's out there somewhere.
There is somewhere. It is on one of the box sets. I think there's the reggae version of it. So I'm like playing it with him, and I get fed up. And he remembers me throwing drumsticks at him. I don't know if I did that, but I remember saying to him, "This is like not right." I mean, the closest you've ever come to Jamaica was like there's the train station on Long Island, a Jamaica train station. I said,
Yes.
"That's the closest you've ever come to Jamaica. You know nothing about reggae, you know." So I remember Paul Simon coming in the studio, and I was looking through the glass. I couldn't hear anything he was saying to Phil, but I hear him holding guitar up like this, going like this. And his thought was like, if you play a rhythm that is so powerful and people having so much fun, the lyric will go right over their head, right over their head, kind of like YMCA and Baby Please Go All the Way, those kind of songs. The lyrics go all over, right over your head because the music is so good. So I thought about the shuffle that we do it in because I used to love this song by Jimi Hendrix called Up From the Skies. It's on
Yeah.
the Axis Boulder's Love album. And it has the same beginning as Only the Good Die Young. And then it does the swing, like that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
just said, Billy, how about this? And he was like, yeah, that's great. Phil loved it, And I put brushes on that, but I couldn't do it live with brushes. The brushes wouldn't be loud enough, to
Oh
carry in an
yeah.
arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you like life on the road? Because you spent a lot of time on the road.
Well, personally, I love it. When I
Yeah.
leave the room in the morning, like 10 o'clock, get up, go downstairs, order breakfast, sign it to the room, go back upstairs, do whatever you want to do, go back into your room, the bed's made, the towels are picked up, everything's nice and clean. You don't have to do anything, you know. Being with Billy Joel was being in a bubble for after we became really big. It was like you were in a bubble. You could do no harm. You never really got in trouble. It was just a bubble. And when that bubble finally burst, it was a back to reality again.
Yeah.
That's what the hard part was. That's when the book really clicked in.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the family thing now, how I was raised and stuff like that. The real thing that made me write it the way it is that these shows like American Idol and The Voice and all things like that. You see these kids that got talent. Some of them sound like they're singing at their cousin's wedding and stuff like that. But to have four people judging them and it's almost like the Gong Show sometimes.
Yeah.
It's almost humiliating.
I'm
and
not a
and
fan. Yeah, I
no,
never got into that show, those shows.
yeah, and so the ones that win, first of all, the show itself owns everything that they do. If they write a song while they're on the show, it's the show song. They own it, the publishing and everything like that. So I wanted to write a book about like you have to pay your dues to make it because you hear a lot of these guys that win or these girls that win, they go out on the road and they can't last for a half hour to do a show. We're doing shows 2 hours and 10 minutes, full bore, no breaks, no nothing. These people can't do that because they never paid their dues. So that's why I wrote about the bands I was in from the beginning and the clubs and what happened in those certain bands, how I grew or how I fell or, what it was like, the challenge of being in a band.
That's what worries me about the future of rock and roll. There's that phrase nowadays, rock and roll is dead. I don't think it's dead. They're out there. There are kids out there that are playing rock and roll music, but I don't know. I don't know enough. I guess I'm not. I don't know. Maybe there are bands out there who are hitting the clubs and playing like you did, but I worry about where's rock and roll going. Are there some good
Well,
bands out there
well,
that you see?
I did this thing called the Sessions. It's a panel that goes to different colleges, and it doesn't only have musicians on the panel, but it also has music lawyers and roadies and people like that work in the industry, because we feel that you don't necessarily have to be a musician to be in the music business. There's other things to do. And we talk about that all the time, like what's going to happen to music. And I remember sitting next to this woman who wrote This Kiss by, the song This Kiss, the country tune.
Yes.
What's her name that does it? She's really pretty.
It's a Shania
She's
Twain?
married to the cowboy. They're married.
Is it Faith Hill or Shania?
Yes, Faith Hill.
Faith Hill. Okay.
Faith Hill in This Kiss.
Yep.
So, she wrote the song, and it was like, so I asked her on the sly, I said, do you think there'll ever be a time when there's four guys in suits that are singing, that are going to be as big and be a craze again? And she looked at me and she said, if the songs are good, it could happen. The songs are like weak now, they're not saying anything. The only ones that are saying things are the rappers are saying things, or the young guys that are talking about suicide and things like that, or some of the girl groups now are talking about what it's like being gay or and stuff like that. Somebody told me that if you aren't writing about what is happening in the world these days, then forget it. You're not going to do it. We need people to write like that. I had asked Billy when COVID hit and the way the country was going and everything like that. I said, Billy, you should be writing, man, talking about what it's like. You've got this great way of saying things. And Billy said to me, he said, it's time for the young people to speak. It's time for them to speak. If a young kid would write about how he feels about what's going on in government, in the change, everything we have to know, all the changes we're going through in life, this young kid's got to write about that. Not an old guy like me, like, oh, I see you crying and I don't know what the hell's going on with you,
So true. Yeah.
Somebody's got to do that. They're just distracted by this instantaneous, like, I can play a bar of drums and I can loop the whole thing and I got my whole drum track,
Yeah. And and you don't even have to get together to record anymore. You can do it you can just do it like we're talking now virtually. And I don't know if that's a great idea. You got to have that chemistry,
People ask me all the time, they say, hey, if I send you tracks, can you play on them? And I said, no, I'd rather you be in the room, because if I'm doing something you don't like that I'm doing, I'm not going to do it again, send it back to you and then do it again, book the studio again and do it again. No. Yeah. I want you in the room to tell me that that's great. That I don't like that. Can you do something different there?
Well, like the Van Halen boys back in the day at Sunset Sound, they would all be in the same room. They could all see each other and just kind of read each other. And yep, you're going there, and I'm going, okay, almost like you're on stage.
Yeah,
and which direction you're going.
We did this recording, two albums with this guy, Jimmy Lee Hook. He comes out of Cleveland, and he insisted on the band being in the room with him.
Yeah,
they had to build this whole cover. He plays piano, and they had to build this whole cover over the piano because the drums were leaking. We did it at Richie Cannata's studio, Cove City out on Long Island, and it came out great because there's no click track. The tempo moves with the feel of the song. It's just something that you think about, like, what if they quantized the Beatles songs, or fixed every mistake that was in a Beatles song.
Oh, I know. Leave the mistakes in. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Going back to the Billy catalog, 52nd Street, released fall of 78. That's the first of 4 number 1 albums, 2 Grammys, 3 songs in the top 40, My Life, Big Shot, and Honesty. And you write that you forced Billy into writing the lyrics to Honesty?
Yeah. Yeah. I like to play the lyrics. That's what I do. I can't read, can't write music. So I play the lyric because the emotion of the lyric will kind of dictate what I'm going to play. Like, you may be right, it's a smasher, you just beat it. But Honesty, it was a ballad, and we were just playing, and he didn't have lyrics yet. So I started to sing, sodomy is such a lonely word. And then he said, "Oh my God, I got to write lyrics before I lose this."
One of his biggest hits ever could have been called Sodomy.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What happened? Phil Ramone got pissed at you during the recording of My Life? What was
Yes,
that?
because the only thing that left the stranger out of number one was this. Now this ages me when I think about this. It's like we didn't make it to number one and held on to number two because Saturday Night Fever was the number one album.
Oh God, that kept everybody off the top.
Yeah.
Yes.
So disco, we were just kind of coming out of the disco thing, maybe, at the time. And Phil wanted me to play the straight bass drum on My Life. Da-da, boom, 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 dun, 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 dun. And I said, I'm not playing that disco stuff. I'm not doing it. And he threw something on the control board and he goes, look, you've been in this business, what, 20 minutes now? And you're going to tell me what you're not going to play? Get out there and play it. And every time that gold album's on the wall, I walk past it and that gold single's up there. It's like, okay, he
Yeah.
was right.
Wasn't that the song Bosom Buddies had for their theme song?
Yes.
But it's a different person that sings it. What's the
Yes.
deal with
Well,
that?
you know about um, publishing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's two kinds of publishing. There's the mechanical and there's uh, the writer's guy.
Yep.
The mechanical is like whoever owns the song, the publishing company that owns the song can sell it. They could rent it for a certain amount of time and stuff like that. But if somebody else records it and it's not by the artist, Billy Joel, they don't have to pay that royalty. The master, they don't have to pay the master, which Sony owned.
It's like an end around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, for those who may not know, I loved that show. Tom Hanks, Bosom Buddies. That was his first,
It was good. Yeah,
yeah, entrance into
that guy
fame.
that was his friend.
He just passed away.
Did he?
Yeah, the blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he just passed away. And what were you going to say about him, though? You were going to
I
say
think he
something?
went on to do a lot of things too, didn't
He
he?
did. He went on to do quite a bit, and he was on a show with oh boy, CBS show that he was on with Bob Newhart. I remember that. And
Yeah.
he remained friends with Tom Hanks. And then the other girl in the show, she just passed away too. She was on Back to the Future. Crazy.
Yeah. Really
Anyway,
nuts.
Liberty DeVitto is our guest. His 2020 book, Liberty, Life, Billy, and the Pursuit of Happiness, available in hardcover, Kindle, which is what I have, and Audible audiobook formats. Do you do the audio? Is that you?
I did.
Okay.
I did it, and Billy read the forward.
The forward. That's right. So the next number one album is 1980's Glass Houses, the cover shot taken at Billy's house in Long Island. And your first number one is It's Still Rock and Roll to Me. You say the drums tuned down and muffled like the drums on John Lennon's Instant Karma,
Yes.
That's interesting because once I read that, I hear that. Yeah. If you don't ask him a question about Rolling Stone, this song may never have happened, right? The Rolling Stone magazine was a critic.
That's right.
Said something.
He was tired of people pigeonholing him, and so it really didn't matter what it is. It's if you went from what we were doing at the time to punk rock to all that other stuff, it wouldn't be called rock and roll. It's still rock. It's still rock and roll. Even the stuff today, it's still rock and roll. I mean, there's the diehards that say Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley. That's rock and roll. But then there's Van Halen. I mean, rock and roll. AC/DC. Come on, rock and roll. So much. It's different kinds of rock and roll.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I think Billy was so young. You guys were all so young, and yet you're trying to keep up with the times. Because every time there's a new decade that rolls around, that happens. It's like, is it the labels that are looking for the next big thing? Why is it always at the beginning of each decade?
I just think the generations they get tired of the old songs and they want to do their own thing. I also think that equipment changes music a lot. When the synthesizer came out, you had all those bands coming from England and some of the name of those bands, that they could
Yeah, like the
play.
new wave bands you're talking from
Yeah,
the
the
early
drum
80s.
machine was another
Right.
thing that changed a lot of stuff.
But you were able to make that transition, like the Stones with Miss You during the disco era. You were able to somehow, because that cannot be easy to maintain your sound, yet still push forward and be part of the sound of the day. I don't know if that
Well,
makes
yeah,
sense, but you don't want to abandon your sound altogether.
no, you don't want to abandon your sound, but you want to stay kind of current. I remember going to see the Police in Paris. I went to see the Police the first time, and they weren't as big here yet. And I told Billy, I said, "This is band, the Police, man. You got to hear them. They're unbelievable. It's on great." And I can remember the look on his face of like, "Okay, turn south, stranger, 52nd Street, and now there's this band called the Police, three-piece band, guitar, bass, and drums, and they're rocking like crazy, and they got this infused reggae thing going on too. All right, what am I gonna do next?" you know.
Mm, yeah,
So then you get Awful Lena and Sleeping with the Television On and stuff like that, which
yeah.
was his kind of punk thing.
I was just listening to that before we started recording. Yeah. How about Stuart Copeland as a drummer?
As a drummer, to me, Stuart Copeland is like another dear friend of mine, Danny Serafine from Chicago. Danny took
Yes.
took jazz and rock and fused them together and came up with the sound that he has. Stuart took rock and reggae and put them together and came up with that unique sound.
Yeah.
That's what I feel that drummers need to have to do. It's not all the chops that and everything like that. It's like, what makes you stand out amongst everyone else? You know, Sometimes, like myself, it's the fact that you have no idea what you're doing. And you'll just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to play it like this. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, Mick Fleetwood talked about it. He said, I'm kind of like a
yeah,
dyslexic drummer. When
right. He doesn't know
they
what's going
asked me
on.
to, like Lindsey Buckingham would come to me and ask me to play something and I can't play it the way he wanted to. But then Lindsey would say like, I like that though. That's you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I told Mick, I said, you are a reference in the studio when somebody wants to hit the cymbal and the snare at the same time on the one and not at the end of four. They call it do the Mick Fleetwood thing.
Oh yeah.
Boom,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
boom, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it's just a little bit of a fill, but also
yeah,
you have to know when to not like step on Billy and the rest of the band. You don't want to go too crazy. So you got to know. You also got to let the song breathe a little bit too. It depends on the
exactly.
song, I suppose.
That's why I played to his lyric rather than
Yes,
to
they said that about Keith Moon too. Like I remember Roger Daltrey breaking down, like he was in the studio and he was isolating um, just his vocals and Keith Moon. He goes, "Listen to how he's playing to my vocals. Listen to."
yeah.
And Daltrey was just so fascinated, He just and he played with the guy, but he was like a fan listening to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. Yeah, Nylon Curtain, 1982. That has Pressure, Allentown, Goodnight, Saigon. Those three I would put in my top 10 Billy Joel list. Allentown, please tell the story about you jumping up and down with two percussion cases. I love this. I love it. I love the minutia.
First of all, Billy had the song, but it wasn't called Allentown yet. It was called Levittown because of Long Island. And he was always tried to write it. Every album he tried to write it. Well, we're living here in Levittown, and there, but nothing ever happened in Levittown, so he had nothing to write about. But he never threw that out. But so when Allentown was going under, the steel mills were closing and everything was closing down, this was something to write about. And so to make this steel mill sound that you hear on the record, it's a sample of a steel mill. But there's also me with two percussion cases, big ones from SIR, like suitcases, and I'm jumping up and down for the cases to go. And the hard part was to jump in the air and come down on the beat. You had to time it where you jump before the beat happened, which was really a funny thing to do. But I did it, and I had to do it so many times that when I opened up the case at the end, it was just like sawdust. There was nothing left.
Oh, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
I love that song. An Innocent Man comes out in 1983, and this is early MTV days. I still remember watching the video for Uptown Girl as a kid. And this also has Tell Her About It, the title track, The Longest Time, Leave a Tender Moment Alone, and Keeping the Faith. I mean, it's like a greatest hits album. You say in the book that of all Billy's albums, this was the most fun to make. Why was that?
It was so much fun because, you know, I had a lot of stack of 45s that I used to bring with me on the road. I have a little record player. We could play them, you know, or make tapes of all those songs. And we used to listen to them all the time. We loved that stuff. That's the stuff that when we were growing up, you know, the Four Tops, the Supremes, all that Stax music and stuff like that. So it's funny. Billy wanted to do a tribute to the music that we grew up doing, and we would come in the studio and actually listen to Under the Boardwalk, and then record Innocent Man. You know, listen to the Four Seasons, and then record Uptown Girl. You know,
Yeah.
And so we nailed it most of the time. I mean, I love Leave a Tender Moment Alone because I feel like I'm playing on a Burt Bacharach record, you know? Like just the drum part is so simple, but it to me, that one fits perfect, you know?
And to have that much fun and also
Yeah.
have the album be so huge must have been rewarding too.
Oh, we thought it was going to be a bomb because it was so
Really?
much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's too much fun, man. It's going to be a bomb.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
and it connects with the younger audience and it introduces the younger audience, like myself, to music that came before me. So that's the other thing that's so cool about it. That's all I noticed that with rock and roll. There's a line you could trace that goes all the way back to even like classical.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like it just keeps progressing, or maybe take a left or a right, or just things come together, and it's so cool. I
Well,
love that.
when he wrote This Night and he put the middle part, This Night You're Mine, it's pathetique. It's a Beethoven song. And that happened in the 50s and early 60s with a song called A Lover's Concerto by the Toys, I believe, did it. And it went, How gentle is the rain that falls only on the meadow. It's a classical piece that they just put lyrics to.
Right.
So Billy, remembered that and put This Night together and put that.
The opening drum fill to Uptown Girl, it has as many notes as there are syllables in your name. Is that intentional?
That's right. It goes Liberty DeVitto. I didn't do that on purpose.
Somebody
you
didn't?
mentioned it
Okay,
to me.
somebody mentioned.
Somebody said to me, "They go, that's your name that you play in the beginning of that song."
Oh man, that's yeah. You could have lied and said, "Yes, I did that on purpose."
Yeah,
like
I could have.
Dark Side of the Moon is about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And there's something interesting you write about the drums on keeping the faith. They're processed through a Simmons electronic drum brain, and there are also ghost notes. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, ghost notes on the album. It's me playing the drums. There's the ghost note is you hit the 2 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But sometimes you move your hand as you're playing it, like boom, bah, 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 bah. Well, when they remixed it for the single, they put it through this process, and they put a gate on the snare drum, so you only heard the bah, bah, and even some of the fills that actually go bah, 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 you only hear bah, 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 boop, sometimes because it cut it out, and it just bothered me.
Yeah. Well, I was just the opposite of that is like What's your favorite effect on your drums? You talk about like a
Me?
gated reverb effects, or is there something that really you love when in the afterwards, like in the mix?
Well, I
Something.
love whatever they used on the Stormfront album, which
Okay.
you'll eventually get to. That has a great big drum sound. But
Big.
that was the time. That was the time, a big drum
Right.
sound.
Right.
Nowadays, we're almost back to the three microphones on a four-piece set of drums. That's what's going back to again.
Yeah.
You know,
All those recordings, it feels like you're in the room with you and Billy and the rest of the band. I mean, that's the thing that in nowadays, that's the other thing. I'm starting to sound old, but a lot of these newer songs, it just sounds like all one big block of sound. Whereas those old recordings, it's like you're right in the room. You can hear every
yeah.
single instrument. And that's analog though. Is that why? Is it because everything's on like Pro Tools and all that stuff?
Now everything on Pro Tools. Yeah. Well, you can edit. You can. You know what happens when I go in the studio and I'm playing? You can't hear that the bass drum didn't exactly hit on this one note. You can't hear it, but they can see it. So they move it. So it's
Right.
absolutely perfect. You know,
That's a problem though. You'd rather keep
that
it. Yeah. Yeah.
that makes it very sterile.
Yeah, exactly.
Made
Well,
in a laboratory or something,
I tell you, there's so many. I have just some great stories that just connect me to your music. One was I remember when I was a sports writer in high school. One of my first articles I wrote, it was the local soccer team was supposed to go all the way, and they lost. And I said, Billy Joel once said, "Only the good die young." I remember I snuck that into one of my articles. But another one I think about is the summer of '89, and I had this job at the local school, and it was the worst job ever. It was just cleaning, scraping the gum off the desks and
yeah.
waxing the floor. And it was like 120 goddamn degrees inside of that building. And Greatest Hits 1 and 2, Billy Joel. I played that every single day, and that got me through it. And that just sticks with you forever. Then you just connect, and I know you've got that with certain songs or
I
bands
do.
grow up that you're just like, man, I remember playing that 45 or that album. Yeah,
Yeah, I put on the first Beatle album, and I'm in Rosanna Lounge's basement.
exactly. So yeah, I thank you for that, for getting me through the summer of '89. And I love those two new tracks, You're Only Human, Second Wind, and The Night Is Still Young. I love both of those. Um, the Bridge then comes out after that,
Right.
1986. Matter of Trust, This Is the Time, Modern Woman, and Baby Grand. A Matter of Trust, influenced by Robert Palmer with a bit
Yes.
of The Police. Right. Okay. Talk about that.
Yes. Well, actually, Robert Palmer, when he did the lights are on.
Addicted to Love. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yes, it's got that same boom, da, boom, da, boom, and then big guitar. So that's what Billy was looking for. You always reference in the studio. It's like, okay, I want it like this. I want it like Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
that means I'm not going to play boom, 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 da, boom, 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 boom. I'm just going to play boom, da, you know, stuff like that. The guitar is going to be like, things like that. Like
Yeah.
you may be right. Rolling Stones tune.
Yeah.
Play. Let's do it like a Rolling Stones song. And Billy always used to come in. We do an album, and like the Nylon Curtain. When we did the Nylon Curtain, Billy came in and said, "I don't want you to even try to think about how we're going to duplicate this live. We're just going to do what we feel fits on these songs. Just no matter what it is, we're going to do it. We'll think about how to reproduce it live later on." Where Glass Houses was like, we recorded the first three songs, You May Be Right, Sometimes a Fantasy, and one other one. And we went on the road on the 52nd Street tour and started to play those songs on the road. They were like road dogs. That album, Glass Houses, is the band all by itself. Nobody else came in to do anything. Like sometimes you add an extra guitar player, a studio
Right.
guy, or a sax, or something like that.
Right.
Percussion. We did everything on Glass Houses. It was just us guys.
Wow.
So that was the band, and so that's why Nile and Curtain became so different. It's like all the stuff that we did in the studio. Once we started to form the tour for Nile and Curtain, it was like, okay, how are we going to replicate this? Scandinavian Skies. Russell and David Brown played snare drum on that. In the part that I played,
Yep.
like 4 times, overdubbed the same thing 4 times.
Yes, Stormfront that's senior year of high school for me. Stormfront, 1989. We didn't start the fire. I remember that was on the radio, MTV all the time. Third album to hit #1. We didn't start the fire. Leningrad. I go to extremes. You got to love that one, right? I
That's
go to
my
extremes.
favorite.
You're drumming on that.
That's my favorite. I go extremes.
That I can just listen to just to hear you play drums. Downeaster Alexa, and That's Not Her Style. And So It Goes, Shameless, also singles. We Didn't Start the Fire was one of the last songs recorded for the album, which is interesting. Sony Records, they heard second and third singles, but they didn't hear that first single. So they say, Billy, we need another one. And now he uses a book called Chronicles to come up with.
Chronicles.
Okay.
Yeah, it's history, like in a row, like what happened in a row.
And wasn't John Lennon's son? Didn't he run into John Lennon's son?
Oh,
Sean
they
with a
came in the
friend.
studio, him and a friend of his who became a very famous DJ. They came in the studio and Sean, and he sits down and he picks up one of the guitars, and then I started playing the drums, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's so great! The sound!" They couldn't believe the sound in the headphones.
And then they made a comment to Billy, like, boy, man, things were a lot easier when you grew up, man. It's not easy these days. And Billy's
Yeah,
like, are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, what's this?
Have you heard of JFK? Have you heard? That's kind of what inspired him to write the lyrics, Billy.
Yeah, that's exactly what inspired him. A young kid saying like, you guys got it made. You had it made back then.
Did you expect the song to be as big as it was?
No, I knew it was good, but I thought it was pretty monotonous. Like Billy says, it's probably one of the worst melodies he's ever written. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah. Yeah. Did he ever he never updated the lyrics in the ensuing years? No, right? There was a reason, I think. Did he have a reason behind
that? Why would he?
Why bother? Yeah.
This song's long enough the way
it's long enough. Oh my God, that's right. You'd have to add another 3 verses.
Yeah.
You say that Billy never threw anything away. He had bits and pieces filed away, and then that would come in handy for Leningrad, right?
Yes, I can remember him playing this piece at home, but it was fast. It was dun 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 dun. Ding, 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 ding. So we get to the end of Leningrad. Until we came to Leningrad, and he just stopped. We didn't know how to end it. And I said, Billy, you know that thing you play all the time really fast? Let's play it slow right here. Bum, 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 dun, dun.
Oh, powerful.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, you could tear up listening to that one. Well, the other one is,
it was so great because I went to Soviet Union with him, and I'm sitting next to him as he's writing these words, like nailing it. Like, this is exactly what it was like when we got there. We thought, I went there thinking I was going to see these dragons with 3 heads that breathe fire, and my name is Liberty. What are you, my nuts going communist country?
Yeah.
But it was so great.
Good Night Saigon is the other one, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that song just still hits you. And I had my dad, my mom had friends, that were, they knew people that were in Vietnam, and which is similar. That was Billy's story. He wasn't there, but he had friends that were there, and they were telling him this is what it was like.
Yeah,
you guys all got together for the vocals,
and we will all go down together. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear me yell "You're all right, Sarge." I yell that,
Yeah.
and you can really hear Phil's voice when he goes, deep voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you hear a song like that to this day when you get emotional, listen to some of those songs,
Yeah.
especially a song like that, man.
When we had a falling out, me and Billy, it was like 15 years of not talking to each other. And I went to Sicily and visited my family, my mother's side of the family over there. And on the way back, I said to myself, I'm going to listen to every song we've ever done on the airplane.
How did that
And I
feel?
did. And it was like, oh my God, we, I guess we were really good.
Hell yeah.
you know?
Hell yes. I mean, was it hard though? Was it difficult, bittersweet? Because at that point
Yeah,
you weren't with him anymore.
it was kind of bittersweet because I always hated tribute bands. Like, what are you doing? Billy's still alive. Why are you guys doing all this stuff? But when we got inducted into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, me, Richie, and Russell, along with Doug Stegmeyer, I had to relearn the songs again. And so I was listening to the tunes and like going like, okay, that's pretty good. And now, so I'm listening to the tunes, and anytime I hear a song on the radio, I go to the studio. I'm in the studio again, not
Right.
live, in the studio again. So now I've got the songs that we're going to play for the Lords of 52nd Street because we're putting the band together again.
Yep.
And I'm with three of the guys. There's three of us that are together that were together 50 years ago. Still joking, still laughing backstage, still doing all the things we did back then. The only one that was missing was the guy that I looked at for 30 years, in the studio and live and joked with, and he was my friend. We used to have Thanksgiving dinners together. We used to, all this kind of stuff. That's why at the end, when I was laying there, I had my knee done, I had a knee replacement on my right foot, my right leg. And I thought to myself, this has gone on too long. We're too old. People around us are dying. We were so close. We were closer than brothers, and we created something that the world embraced. I remember telling my friends after me and Billy got together again, somebody told me, he goes, we're so thankful that you guys got together again because it would have been such a waste to think that the music that of our childhood ended with two guys hating each other,
Oh, I know.
I mean, which happens so many times with
Sure.
bands, but yeah. And when we got together, he sat on one side of the table, I sat on the other side of the table. We had breakfast together. And we didn't even talk about any of the bad things. We just talked about the great things. And we talked about guys who were with us that are no longer with us, who was sick, who was, this. We talked about our kids because we have young children and we also have older children. We talked about all that. And like I say in the book, it was like standing on a bridge and all the water of the past was going underneath this bridge. And it was just these two friends standing on the bridge.
So happy to read that. So happy
Yeah.
to, because there was quite a while. It was what, '06 when you were no longer his drummer, and how many years before you were able to reconcile with him? When did that take?
Well, yeah, it was 30 years as his drummer, then 15 years of not
15 years.
talking to him
Oh,
or dissing each other in interviews.
right,
Like,
right.
but you know what it was like? It was like, I don't know if you ever have a girlfriend or something like that, and you broke up and you're really upset about it. And every time you said something mean about her, or a friend, you say something mean about them, but in your heart, you're like going like, why did I say that? I still
Oh,
love this
yes.
person.
Oh, yes. But I
And
give you credit because I know reporters have tried to, you've remained uh, strong with people trying to find out what exactly happened. You're like, I'm not going to talk about it. And is that
right,
difficult? I mean, I'm sure you get asked like a million times, well, what happened?
all the time.
All the time. And I read the Rolling Stone article. They're like, so do you want to talk about it? You're like, no, that's not easy. And you've, out of respect for each other, it's like, we're not going there.
Yeah, and the question now is, it's like, will you guys ever get together again?
Of course.
And my favorite line that I've ever seen in a video clip of John Lennon when he's living in New York now and he's walking through the streets and somebody yells out, "Hey, John, are the Beatles going to get back together? When are the Beatles getting back together?" And John just listens and goes, "Tomorrow," and just keeps walking.
I know. And people in New York were like that too. Like when he was, he'd be walking through the park and I'm sure all the, New Yorkers were like, come on, man, when are you getting back together? Yeah. He loved New
Tomorrow.
York though. He loved New York. He loved that,
Great.
that realness of New Yorkers. Just, they say it like it is.
There's
Yeah.
something about the energy of New York.
Yeah.
We used to talk about being in a studio and hey, let's record the next album down in Montserrat, and we're like, you can't play New York State of Mind and then go sit on the beach.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you got to go outside and like run into a hooker or some guy trying to move his things around and ripping you off.
Yes, exactly. Did you know when River of Dreams was being made, 1993, that was going to be it for Billy? Did he give any indications to you like this is it, I'm done? Because he hasn't recorded any music since, other than or he's done classical, right?
No,
He's
I recorded with him probably 8 or 9 of the songs that were to be on River of Dreams. But then because he was writing the songs, playing the piano, singing the songs, and he was producing the album himself. Then he got Danny Krochmeyer to come in and produce. Danny wanted to use his guys. So that's why on River of Dreams, I only play on Shades of Grey, because that's from they were called the Boathouse Sessions.
Yep.
Billy built this studio in a boathouse on Shelter Island. And we used to go out there every day and record songs. We did, River of Dreams. We did Blonde Over Blue, all those tunes. And so only Shades of Grey made it on because he didn't like what Danny did to Shades of Grey. So Billy said, "I want to put this one on there."
Yeah, that
But
wasn't the funnest experience for you, that album, right? That didn't seem like it was.
no, because I got a phone call from Skylar Deal, who was playing bass at the time, telling me that he just heard that Billy was in the studio with a whole bunch of new guys. And so I called Billy. I said, "What's going on?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I heard you're in the studio with a whole bunch of different people." He said, "Yeah, I have to try something different." But you see, that's another thing about the book that I wrote. I could have dissed everybody in the band. I know where the bodies are buried and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not that kind of guy. I don't want to do that. So what I did was, I'm going to put myself in Billy's shoes. The man has had a career for 50 years. Sometimes you have to change things. Like every album changed. Turnstiles was this one style of thing. Then The Stranger was different with Phil Ramone in there. And then 52nd Street leaned more towards jazz. And then Glass Houses was just a rock album with just a band. Then Nylon Curtain was this other one. Nothing's the same.
Right.
It's not like you can play a Van Halen album, the first album, and then play the last Van Halen album, and it sound the same.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the same guitar and that whole, because that was their style. So it went through. Billy was a chameleon. He could change all the time. But sometimes those changes meant personnel too. So to stay alive, he had to do that. Not meaning to hurt people, but,
He seems like the guy, obviously you know him well, that must have killed him to have to do that, right? He loved you guys.
yeah.
So it could not have been, I mean, I would think he had a few sleepless nights thinking about that.
Well, I'm sure he did. Yeah. There's a song he wrote. What's it called? It's about Doug when Doug Stegmeyer when he lost the gig.
It's on that
Doug,
album, River of Dreams.
no, it's not on that album.
Okay.
Money or Love, it's called. It's
Oh yeah.
on an outtake. Money or Love, what one are you doing it for? He wrote that after having a meeting with Doug, and Doug needed money. It's like, what are you doing this? Were you doing it for money, or are you doing it because you love to play music?
Yeah.
He talks about who knew that it was going to get this big. Nobody knew when we were
Right.
driving them rent the cars.
But did you get the feeling that was it for Billy? Like, were you surprised he's never
No,
return to
I
the
know
studio?
after River of Dreams came out, the first thing we did was play the Letterman show because Letterman had just switched to the other TV station. And I remember being in a dressing room and I walked in on him and I said, I heard you're not going to write songs anymore. He said, no, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to expose myself anymore because all the songs were written, about. I went to ask him, I said, how do you write these songs? He said, I write about life as it is or how I wish it would be. That's how I write the songs. And then he said, I'm tired of exposing myself,
Wow.
letting myself out there. And he was very discouraged with the business. So many people ripping him off and just,
Yeah.
it's a terrible business.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's the most beautiful thing about the business is the music itself and creating the music, but
Right.
it's all that other bullshit, the business side of it. Yeah. And you got to be tough, right? You went through all those battles just like that. You talk about like the royalties and publishing and all that stuff. It's like stuff
Yeah.
that a lot of musicians are like, I don't want to deal with that shit. I just want to make the music. But if you get too much like that, you can get burned.
Well, some of them don't have the time to do that.
Right, right.
It's like they're making the music. You got to write an album. I mean, back in the day, the Beatles days, they would put out two albums in a year.
Oh, I know it's insane.
They put in 1968 or 67 or 68, they put out Sergeant Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, and the single Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane in one
Right.
year.
No, that's the label pushing them too, right?
Yeah,
Product. Got to have
yeah.
product. Like in the 70s, I remember Kiss put out like 2, 3 albums a year. And yeah, it's like this, it's like a whirlwind for you, right? I mean, it goes by, those years must have gone by super fast.
Yeah,
So
and then you got to top what you just did. You have a million seller, and you got to do it again or
pressure.
even top it. I remember when Michael Jackson had Thriller. It was huge, huge. Then the next album didn't quite sell as much, and they were saying that it was a bomb.
And he said in
But it sold
interviews,
millions.
I
It sold
know.
millions.
And he said in interviews from that point on after Thriller, he was determined to match the success or beat it. It's like you can't beat it, no pun intended. But you can't do that. It's impossible. I mean, there's only one time you can get a Thriller. You can't just
Right,
yeah, and it's
right.
crazy to think that yeah, like the Bad was the one that followed. It's considered a disappointment because it only sold 10 million copies as opposed to 20 or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Were you ever able to like step back and then just reap the rewards or say, man, we're kicking ass here, or was it just kind of you're always on that
I
wheel?
excuse me. I was always satisfied with my life as it was. I didn't think that, well, I should be making a whole lot more money. I mean, people would sometimes say that I knew from my childhood, like friends' parents would say, like, yeah, wow, guys are doing great. Wow, I hope you get a piece of that, Billy Joel. Like
Oh, getting
you
in your
think like,
ear. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, no, we just get paid a salary. But the salary, I can't complain about it. It was good. I mean, I had a great house. My kids did great. So it would have been nice, but my ex-wives would have had more money instead of
Yeah.
me.
I know. Well, I want to wrap it up with basically the message of the book, at least from what I get out of it, is that it's kind of like the story you're telling about your mom, just saying, get out there, and as much as she wanted to get out there and help you, you got to be tough. And you went through some serious stuff, man, like depression, big time depression,
Yeah.
with your battles with alcohol, divorce, and the thing with Billy in '06. So like, what do you credit all that to your upbringing, to like what got you through those things, that inner strength to pull yourself out of those
Well,
periods?
I think the passion for the music that I love performing. I love being in the studio with other great musicians and creating, because you're creating something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's there. They say it's a gift, music, that you can play music. It's a gift. No, it's hard work. You know, your rhythm might have a gift that you can walk down the street and chew gum at the same time. But to play the drums and be in a band, that's the biggest thing in the world. That's work.
It's
That's
heavy
hard
lifting.
work.
Yeah.
And it's your passion that makes you want that, the passion. And having a really solid support group. You know, my parents, then my children, the wife I have now, Anna, because she was with me. We weren't married yet, but she was with me when all the Billy stuff came down.
Exactly. She fell in love with the guy who wasn't Billy Joel's drummer, and that
Right,
is
right.
huge.
That was a big opening to me. You know,
Yeah.
many times it was, you know, they didn't know the person Liberty DeVitto. They just knew this guy that played drums with Billy Joel. You know, like everybody says, "Oh, I know Billy Joel." No, you don't. You don't know Billy Joel. You know the guy that wrote the songs, and the guy you see on stage, but you don't know Billy Joel. You know, it's a
Yeah.
big difference.
But you had the courage to get help too, because you talk in the book about talking to, was it therapist or
Yeah, life coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I still to this day talk to somebody, every couple weeks, once a month, whatever, just to talk to somebody. And there was a funny point in the book where they said something about, what do you hate? And you're like, People Magazine or what was that?
Oh yeah,
People
I hated People
Magazine.
Magazine.
I hate,
Uh,
the other.
another show that was on TV.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what was the show? But she nailed it. She's like, well, you hate People Magazine because it's blowing up all these things in your life or something. There was an
Yeah,
explanation behind it.
yeah,
I could find it here. It's funny.
yeah. That's funny stuff.
But anyway, the point is, yeah, I mean, hey, you go out, you get help. There's always somebody out there that's willing to help, but also you got to pull yourself out of it too. You got to be tough. Life
Yeah,
is, life can be tough, man.
and having that gift of being Liberty DeVitto and being able to play the drums the way I play the drums. Ex-wives can take the money. The government can come after you if you didn't pay a tax or something like that. They could take it away, but they can't take away that thing of playing the drums. They they can't do that. Nobody can take that away, unless of course the mafia breaks your arm or something like that. But
Yeah.
that ain't gonna happen,
Then it's
because I don't deal with them. You know.
Yeah, here's is this the quote? Oh, here we go. The first thing to oh, I just lost the page again. Hold on. Yeah, this is the People Magazine. I love this. Oh, here we go. People Magazine. Yeah. The first thing the psychologist asked was for me to tell her about myself. He said, I'm an Italian from New York and I play the drums. My wife thinks I'm angry and that I talk too loud. I hate everything and I complain too much. And then the shrink says, well, it all goes with the territory. Those would be the traits of a New York Italian who plays drums. And then she says, what makes you angry and what do you hate? People Magazine, the TV shows Sex and the City and Ally McBeal.
That's it. Yeah.
The fact that Billy Joel thinks he's done with music and what the terrorists did on 9/11, which, yeah, that's heavy stuff. And now she says, you hate People Magazine because it over dramatizes and is full of the dirt in your business. You hate the TV shows because they're empty with no real social value. You're mad at Billy because you want to go on with what you love the most. And you hate the fact that he's in control of your destiny. As for 9/11, we'll go to the next page here. As for 9/11, everybody hates what happened then.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. She just told it like it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great,
Wasn't
great,
holding back.
great read. Great read, Liberty. Thank you. And so the book's been out since 2020, so people can get Liberty Life, Billy and the Pursuit of Happiness from Hudson Music Books. And it's in hardcover, Kindle, Audible.
I did write another one.
Did
It's
you?
a children's book. It's called Love Santa Claus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is on
that came
Amazon.
up on Amazon when I went to your page. That was okay.
That came
So
out
that
last year around Christmas time.
all right.
Unfortunately, the boat that was carrying the printed books didn't make it in time for Christmas. So next Christmas, it should be big, but it's on Amazon.
Cool. Yeah, I see it here. Love Santa Claus, a humble-hearted Christmas story.
Yeah.
Is this something you want to do more of?
Yeah, I like doing that. I have a 6-year-old and I watch her and what her friends like and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
but
Excellent.
it's about how Santa got his job, his gig, and whether you believe it or not, the story of Christmas and stuff like that. If somebody was interviewing Liberty DeVitto, like you are, you have to mention Billy Joel, because Billy Joel is a part of and why I'm talking to you, because of Billy Joel. So when you're interviewing Santa Claus or talking about Santa Claus, you have to mention the whole Jesus part, because that's why they're Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Whether you believe or not. Because I know a lot of people that don't believe, and I have my doubts too. But he has to be mentioned, because this is why Santa has his job, and he's very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. Yeah, so that's on Amazon, Kindle and hardcover, and Lords of 52nd Street. So what's going on
Lords of
with you and the
52nd Street,
guys?
playing around. Playing. We just played last night. Did we play last night? Yeah, we played last night. Did some good crowds. 1,000, 5,000 people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Crazy
And
stuff.
there is a website people can go to get the gigs. I've been there.
Yes, Lords of 52nd Street. It's on Facebook, and there's a website. And then there's the Slim Kings. Slim Kings, we write our own songs. We get placements on TV shows and stuff like that. That's a lot of fun, because it's with these young guys that are really like, they think different.
Cool.
But the old school me and the new guys meld, because they'll come up to me with a hip hop song or R&B song, and I'll go, "Why don't we do a song with a beat like this?" And I'll listen to the song, and I'll say, "They sampled Motown. That's a Motown beat." So it's old school, and they're putting their new swing into it.
And that's studio work only, or do you do some live?
Yeah, no, we go play out live sometimes.
Yep. So is there a website for that too?
Yeah,
because I could put a link to Slim Kings.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to that site as well, and then you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Yeah, all that crap.
TikTok.
No TikTok.
No TikTok. Yeah, the shorter the video, the better. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to see a 5-second video looping over and over again, but that's where we're at.
That's what they do.
That's where we get our news. Yeah, Liberty. Thanks, man. This was so great. This was a highlight for me.
A lot of fun.